Hey, welcome back to my table. My name is Daniel, and I'm just a guy who's identified how loved and adored I am by God. It's my passion and my purpose in life to help everyone I meet understand their place of value to the King and their place within the kingdom of God. And one of the ways that God's allowed me to do this is to write a book called Solomon's Song. It's a 90-day devotional, and it's based entirely on the Song of Solomon. All 118 passages are broken down into 90 individual love letters from God. And the power of that is that it helps us understand a very graphic picture in a way we understand. We understand relationship. We understand this kind of relationship, lateral relationships. And this helps us understand and get a glimpse of what a vertical relationship is supposed to look like. And so we see this illustrated all throughout the Song of Solomon, and we're actually in chapter number 3 and verse number 7 and 8 today of the Song of Solomon, and our devotional day is day 34. And we're talking about the darkness changes nothing. Now last time we saw a little flashback, or flash forward rather, of the bride going home, and people didn't recognize her, and what they didn't recognize was the change. They didn't recognize the change that was in her life, and they want to know who this was, and really what they're asking is, who gave you the change? And people may not ever know the king, or they may not know the king, but they will know you. And they know the effects, the change, and they see the effects and the change the king brings on you. And that will in turn drive them to want to know the king. Now the hitch is you got to know the king. Because if you know the king, you can't just say, I know the king. You can't just talk about how you know the king. You can't just say, I love being in a relationship with the king. But if there's no evidence of the king having been in your life, or there's no evidence of a change, it's hard for people to recognize you as anything different than what you always were. And so change doesn't happen just because you say you know the king. Change happens because you truly know the king, and you spend time with the king like the bride is spent with her groom. That produces a change. It's time spent. You become who you hang around. And when you hang around God, your voice and your talk and your speech and your walk and everything about you changes, and not becomes a super stuffy spiritual person, religious in every mindset of the word, but it becomes this person that says, I adopt the heart of the person I'm around. The same things that God is compassionate about, I can get compassionate about because I love Him, and I love how He's compassionate, and it bleeds over. The way He responded to people are ways we're able to respond. And so we're going to actually jump right back into the story, back into real time with the story in day 34. And they were talking about, they're in bed together, and she is speaking about something. She wakes up in the middle of the night, and like the sudden, you ever had those where you just kind of wake up because maybe anxiety or something wakes you up, a dream, or hearing a noise, or thinking you hear a noise, or what have you, will cause you to just suddenly just sit right up in bed. It scares everyone around you. It's like flashbacks, it's like the war movies, like they get up and scream, and just like those flashbacks. But she has this dream, or something wakes her up, and when she wakes up, she's looking around, and she makes an observation about where she's at, and the observation allows her to go back to sleep in peace. I love what she sees. So check this out. Song of Solomon chapter 3, verse 7 and 8. The picture here is phenomenal. She says this, behold his bed, which is Solomon's. 80 valiant men are about it, the valiant men of Israel. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man hath his sword upon his thigh, because of fear in the night. There's a lot there, but I want to just draw our attention to a couple of things right there, because it allows me some understanding in my relationship with God. It gives me some peace that maybe I sometimes forget, and it causes me to experience terror, or causes me to experience fear. There's either fear and faith are basically the same. Fear is the twisted mutation version of faith. They both ask you to believe something that you can't see. And she wakes up with this fear, and she sees this king's bed, and she makes this observation from the vantage point that she's at. Because right now she's in a spot that no one, or hardly anyone, will ever see. She is seeing Israel from the bed of the king, and she wakes up, and the perspective brought her world peace. And his bed was surrounded, she said, by 80 valiant men of Israel. The valiant men is what she calls them, highly trained. These are the assassins of Israel. These were the Secret Service. These were I'll go farther than that. These were the elite special forces of Israel. These were the valiant men, David's mighty men. These were the valiant men. There were 60 trained assassins that surrounded the bed of Solomon. Now you might think that's kind of weird to have men surrounding your bed, but they weren't. I don't think they were like looking in on him. I'm just gonna say that because that's the part of the that's where Daniel Snamball's mind would be. Well, there's like 60 guys like watching me right now. No, 60 men. Their backs would, I'm sure, would have been turned to the king, or there would have been a screen of some sort of privacy. But they surrounded his bed. They surrounded his sleeping quarters. They surrounded where the king was resting with 60 highly trained men with swords, and they're not afraid to use them. They knew how to use the weapons that they had, and they surrounded him. And while the darkness concealed danger, because they were there for a reason, they were there because the fear of the night. So there was definitely something for them to be there for. There was a fear that was valid. There was a fear that was very true, and there was a fear that was right, and it was there in the palace, and they were right to be afraid. But there were also, the darkness concealed the fear. This is what I'm getting at. The darkness, the night, conceals fear, conceals terror, conceals dangers, conceals threats, conceals opposition. The darkness is going to conceal the enemy's movements from your eyes and from your vision. But what the darkness also concealed, what she was not able to see, was the fact that there was men that were standing there as protectors and guardians. And while the darkness does conceal dangers, it also holds your protection as well. And that's my message to you from this passage is you may be in a spot in life where you are afraid because there is darkness around you and it surrounds you. The unknown is surrounding you, and it's what could be or what might happen, and those are all very valid fears because there are some terrible things that could happen. There are some things that you say, well Daniel, based upon where I'm at in life, this and this and this is a real possibility for me, and I live in fear of that. I understand that because it is possible, and it is without a doubt there is legitimacy to that fear. But may I also remind you that while the darkness conceals the unknown dangers for you and the unknown threats, the darkness is also concealing something much bigger than the threats and much bigger than the enemy. The darkness conceals your protection, and the protection is there whether you're aware of it or not. And just like she could sleep in the darkness and unaware, they just suddenly didn't appear when she woke up. They were there while she was sleeping. They were there while she was vulnerable. They were there while she was unable to defend herself. The darkness also concealed her protection, and they surrounded her, vigilant, ready. And I love that passage in the book of Proverbs says the day is like the night for God. The day is like the night. He said, I see everything. David said it again. He said, look, he said, where can I go to hide from you? He said, you see everything. The day is that you have night vision. There's nothing that happens that you are not aware of. There's nothing that happens that's out there that I cannot see, that you have not already seen first. God is your protection. And there has to be a time where you just say, you know what, I can only do so much. You know, I can only do so much to prevent this situation from taking place. I can only do so much to prevent this from happening in my life, in the life of my family. And after that, I've just got to let God take this thing. I can only do so much to provide for this area or that area to make this happen or make that happen. And after that, I have to give it to God and say, God, this is yours to do. I am His, He is mine. We'll go back to that one, remember? You got to come to a point with your relationship with God where you just hang everything on Him like a coat rack. You don't just take a coat rack and hang it up and hope it stays. You are with faith saying, I'm going to put that coat rack on that coat on that rack, and it's going to hold it there for me. And you got to take what you have and you got to place it on Him and say, you got to hold that. Man, you had by faith, you sat in a chair. You have faith that chair is going to hold you. After a while, you can only worry about that chair collapsing so much before you say, okay, you got me. You've got to give yourself and your fears to God. It's all right to have them, but you've got to know what to do with them when you got them. Because laying awake, David said, I will lift up my eyes into the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He goes on to say that he doesn't stumble, he won't be sleeping on the job. He's going to watch over me. The darkness may hold danger for you, but also conceals the reality of your protection. God sees through the darkness as if it was day. He has you safe, and He holds every detail of your future in His palm. That is enough for me to go to sleep at night. I have fears and struggles just like everyone else. I can only do so much with those fears and struggles, but I know when they take away from me my peace, then I've operated out of fear instead of faith. And faith is what pleases God. I've got to just let him be who he says he's going to be. Man, for a long time I was struggling with a particular person, and not really struggling, but just always on edge around them, they're always kind of on guard, you don't really trust them, and something took place where I had to trust them. And I was struggling with that decision to trust them. And I was up at night, I'm not going to lie to you, I was up at night and I was worried about something, and I had to trust them, and I didn't want to, and I had good reason not to. It was almost like you come to this observation here where God just reminds you, you've got to release that person to be who it is they're going to be. Stop controlling them. The reason why you're awake right now, Daniel, is because you're trying to control someone and make them do what you think that they should do. You're trying to make them do right in this, but you can't. You've got to release that person to be who they're going to be so that I can be who I'm going to be for you. At some point in the relationship, you take a massive step when you engage trust. It's funny because we trust God with our soul, because deep down inside a lot of us like, okay, it's just going to happen, right? But we don't trust him with our day-to-day, and that's the most important thing we have right now is the day-to-day. So I want to challenge you today to trust him with your day-to-day. Trust him today. Let me ask you a question. What about the unknown brings you fear? I want you to, if you can today, sometime, just jot down a quick little list somewhere. What makes you afraid about the unknown? Is it financial? Is it relational? What are those fears that are out there in the unknown for you? Because I know when you dwell on the fears, you do help to bring them to pass. I remember Job, whenever Job lost everything in the space of like 4 or 5 minutes, he got reports of everything that he had lost. His family, his finances, his homes, his cattle, all the stuff that he built his wealth on was just like gone. There you go. It's too early in the morning for that. It was gone. And I love what he said. He said, the thing that I feared the most has come to pass. Like Job genuinely feared all of those things happening. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being afraid, but there is something wrong with dwelling on fear, giving fear a place in your life. The unknown, living in fantasy, saying this could happen or this will happen. What about the unknown brings you fear? Let me ask you this too. What can God not see or take care of in regards to your unknown? It's such a simple question. Such a simple answer, but one that we forget all the time. What is it that God cannot see or take care of in regards to your unknown? Today I'm going to ask you to do something that's really difficult. I'm going to ask you to trust God with your unknown today. To trust him. That's day 34. Now, when we get together next time, you're going to see the wedding, the royal wedding. And this is probably one of my favorite parts of the Song of Solomon. Chapter 7 is my favorite chapter in the Bible, Song of Solomon. But the wedding is the most beautiful and picturesque and symbolic event that takes place. And so that is the wedding. So I want to invite you to the wedding. So next time we get together, I'm going to invite you to dress up. We're going to a wedding. I don't want to take you to a wedding and you're in your pajamas. So when you watch the next video, make sure you're dressed up nice. I'll dress up nice, you dress up nice, and we're going to go to the wedding and not embarrass each other. But you got to see this wedding. This wedding is amazing. It is beautiful. It's the wedding day, and that is coming up next time we meet. Thank you for being with me today. Hope you have a fantastic day today. Bye-bye now.